So playing Earthbound has made me wonder, what psychic superpower would you like to have in real life, Chris?
Besides just being psychic in general?
Oh, yeah, but that would be cool, but what part of the various manifestations of psychic superpowers really appeal to you? Like telepathy,
Yeah,
telekinesis, precognition,
I have thought about this.
pyrokinesis? Uh-huh.
Yeah, I would pick telekinesis
Okay.
because this is what I would always answer. When there's like the icebreakers of like, what superpower would you have? And it's just that broad thing. I would usually say telekinesis, and the answer or the reason is because everybody wants to fly, but people don't realize with telekinesis you can make yourself fly and move objects around.
That is kind of cool.
So you kind of get a two in one with
Hmm.
it. Hmm.
I was also thinking telekinesis, but more from a practical being like, it would be nice to have an extra pair of hands
Sure.
every now and
Uh
again.
huh. While you're
Think about how many
flying.
things I could move while I'm flying.
Yeah. Here's maybe like a question to have with that too as I cheat in the like what superpower would you have? Could you make yourself move really fast as well?
I feel like that
I'm
has to be the
50-50 on it.
downside. Like you've got a speed limiter that's a bit lower than people who just
Okay.
have the flying superpower. But you can cruise at like 20, 30 miles an hour, something like that.
Okay. Well, I mean
But
that's
no
fairly
faster than a
fast.
speeding bullet. Yeah.
Yeah. But that is fairly fast. I'd
See
take
how
it.
you can get around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Might still be faster, take the highway sometimes, but
Yeah.
you could go to the store easily and carry back your groceries.
You don't even have to carry them.
Yep.
Or I guess you carry them with your mind. You just
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. This guy in the air with trailing bags or something like.
Yep, there's Super Chris going to the store, flying around, showing off.
Yeah,
I
looks like you got
I
some
would
bread.
assume Superman occasionally flew his groceries home,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
in the cars in the shop and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Then they will rate that game.
Welcome to Two Brothers Play a Game. I'm Josh.
And I'm Telekinesis Chris.
Super
That's a
Chris,
very long super
here to
name.
save the podcast.
Yes.
Uh, this is a podcast where we, two brothers, play a game we found on sale for Nintendo Switch, except that this year we're doing something a little different. We're playing games we found on the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass Library. We have subscribed to that for the year, so we are making the most of it and having a good time along the way. We'll
Yeah.
discuss some smaller titles we individually checked out in the first half of the podcast, and then in the back half, we discuss and review the game or games of the month that we both played. Now, I do have one more question for you, Chris, before we start getting into the games. How
Uh
many games do
huh.
you think I played for our opening mini topic this month?
5.
I played 8 games. I
Okay.
went a little silly. Um, my
To their
goal
full
was
extent, or
no, no.
okay.
Like some of these were like 5, 10 minutes. I think the highest
Okay.
ones was like 20 to 40 minutes or something like that. Um, but I was in search of a game that I was looking for a two thumbs up game that I had never played before. So, not diving into the old classics, not trying to find the nostalgia.
Hmm.
I was looking for something new that I had missed from way back when, and I was specifically looking at the NES. The
Like that was your
expansion,
full criteria.
yes.
Okay.
So I did 8 NES games, and trying to find that two thumbs up. I will go ahead and give you a spoiler. I might not have. It's very possible. There are a lot of zero thumbs up games that I played this month, hence why I only played them for 5, 10 minutes. But we'll make it quick and go through this and see kind of going to
I
worst to
think you need to
best.
do like a speed review of all of them.
Speed review.
Like,
Oh,
yeah,
just go all at once and then you can do
just
yours.
go. Yeah, just go
Uh,
for it. 8.
Okay,
Yes.
let's
Should I
let's
time you?
make
Should I
this
see
fun.
like?
Yeah,
Should
yeah.
we like give like a time limit? What should the time limit be?
Give me 5 minutes on the
5 minutes.
clock
Okay.
and say when to start.
Okay. Ready, set, go.
Okay, first off is Mystery Tower. This game sucks. It is an NES title. I don't know if it released in the US because the art is a little bit different. So no thumbs up. It's a puzzler. I got stuck on the first level. I think I figured it out eventually. I didn't actually get past the first level in the
Wow.
game, but like playing with it in my mind, I was like, oh, if I had done that, I could have gotten because like you're carrying around stairs. That is the game, and it's just not interesting. It was too frustrating. Moving on. Next up, Blaster Master. This is a game that I'd heard about, and like I'm sure some people have some
Yeah.
very fond memories. I think kind of the general opinion on some of these old games is that part of the challenge was working with these not so great games and becoming good at them because you've just practiced enough effectively. But this is a tank platformer. You are playing as a tank, but it's kind of like a platformer, almost Mario or Mega Man like. It is very unforgiving. It's not very fun, and I only played it for a few minutes. Continuing on, Excite Bike. It is not exciting. There is no computer controlled
No.
bikes, so if you don't have any friends, you are the only person on the track, and it's very dull. There's kind of like a time trial aspect of it, but I did not have super fun with it. It was kind of cool because if you ever played the Trials game, like this motorcycle 2D racing, it kind of reminds me of that, where you have to like
Okay.
position your bike in midair to land well, and that was kind of novel in that it still exists to this day, but that's about the only good thing I could say about it. Continuing on, Ghosts and Goblins, uh, a very famous franchise, very
Yeah.
old. I think it died off a long time ago, but side-scrolling action adventure. It is very hard, which I think I remember hearing about back in the day, and I
Hmm.
died so much and so quickly. Did not complete the first stage. It was decent, but not quite enough for a thumb up. But it,
Wow.
it
Okay.
was a reasonably fun 10 minutes. Okay, Solomon's Key. I was fascinated by this title because it sounds very serious, and it was
Yeah.
actually pretty interesting. It's a 2D um, puzzle platforming game with some very short levels. Kind of reminded me of the old Lode Runner in a way. Um,
Okay.
you have to get through the level to reach a key, and then there's an optional objective to like collect a bell, and then you once you have the key, you can go to the door and move on to the next level. Um, what was kind of interesting is you don't have any weapons. There are enemies in these stages, but what your power is, you have a magic wand that allows you to remove and add certain types of blocks. And so you can like place a block in front of you to block a projectile or to block an enemy that's coming straight at you. And you can use those to kind of climb around and get through the level. And that was pretty interesting.
Okay.
But I did find it very punishing. If you run to an enemy, you're instantly killed. If you lose 3 lives, and you're back at the start of the game. So kind of a hesitant thumbs up on that one. It was novel,
Okay.
but I don't think it was great.
Mm.
Moving into more of a solid thumb up, we're going with Twin B, another game that I don't know for sure if ever came out in the States, but it is a very early vertical scrolling bullet hell piloting
Ugh.
game and not as intense as the bullet hells of today, but still like challenging and fast paced. You had a forward firing gun. You had like a bomb that you drop ahead of you to take out targets on the ground. There was lots of power ups to collect, and it was a good time. I played it. I had a good like 15 to 20 minutes of game on that. So kind of for that historical um, this turned into an entire genre. I think it is notable for that. Now we're moving on. How's my time, by the way?
You got less than a minute.
Oh my goodness. Ninja Gaiden, one thumb up. Really enjoyed it. It's fast. It's
Okay.
frantic. You get to be a cool ninja. The controls were very poor and very unresponsive, unfortunately. And like I'm used to being able to turn around when I jump, which is a video game thing I'm just used to. But in the old days, that wasn't a
Hmm.
thing. So I was
Mm.
constantly attacking the wrong direction because I thought I could turn when I jumped, and that was frustrating. Also, there's this like wall jumping system that was just not intuitive, and I eventually kind of barely figured it out. Um, in the second level, I did finish the first level on this one. The second level, there was instant death pits, which were very unwelcome. It did have a story, which I thought was really novel. There was like this little cutscene of the ninja being ambushed, and then he needed to escape from with a mysterious statue, and like there was this full-on cutscene going on. I was like, okay, that's a story. That's pretty
Yeah.
novel for the Nintendo.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it would probably be very great for retro fans who are kind of passionate about hitting their head against a wall. That is this challenging game, but it is worth checking out. And finally, to celebrate the end of the Stanley Cup, I played NES Hockey. It was surprisingly robust. You got your
Hmm.
passing and your shooting, but you also had icing penalties, something that I was a little surprised to see in an old game, and
Hmm.
fighting. In the middle of the
Yes.
game, a fight could break out and someone would go to the penalty box, and that was just fun. Um, there were different types, like you could play, I think they're just called the thin player, the medium player, and the fat player, but they all have different abilities. That's kind of cool. Um, I wanted this to be my two thumbs up game. I played quite a few matches. I had a lot of fun, but some of the things were just a little too finicky for me to give it the second thumb up. So just one thumb up. I got frustrated because the goalie, when you control the goalie, the defense wasn't doing anything, and I was kind of on my own. Then when I control the defense, my goalie's moving out of the way and not helpful. So it was a little frustrating, but I had a good time still. The end.
Wow.
That was a lot.
6 minutes and 20 seconds.
Wait, 6 minutes? I thought I had a minute left.
No, no, you did, but you went over.
Oh,
I let you go over. I mean, we might as
that
well
last
finish it. And then.
that last one went a little long, I guess. Um, oh well, pretty good. Less
You're
than a
pretty
minute per
good
game.
for that. Yeah.
Didn't quite get to that two thumbs up. I'm gonna try this again next time with Super Nintendo only games, and just try to find that two thumbs up game that I have never played before. And I was gonna say, oh, also, notably, the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, and I think the original Game Boy are all included in the $20 Nintendo Switch Online. So most of the games in the expansion pass are available at just $20 a year, which is pretty good.
Hmm.
The more modern games and the Sega games do require that $50 a
Yeah.
year expansion pass library. So a little different. So
Okay.
what did
Can
you
I
play,
ask?
Chris?
Well, can I say at least two comments and one question for your
Sure.
games? Okay. The the two comments are one, Solomon's Key. I might have tried somewhere because it sounds
Hmm.
familiar, or at least I knew about it. And then Ninja Gaiden, I remember because Nintendo Power would often advertise it, and they had a whole like player's guide for it. And I remembered that because I'm like, this looks cool. I don't understand what this game is because I was like 6 or 7, so I'm like,
Hmm.
ninjas, cool.
Yeah.
What is this? Like, I don't get it. Like, so I mean, we obviously never played it as kids or
Hmm.
got it, but yeah, I remember it just because Nintendo Power would constantly have stuff about it. Um, so it was a pretty like robust game, but it was an early game because if I were like 7, I'm gonna say I was 7. I mean, that's early Nintendo days. So yeah, it had bugs, I'm sure. My question is about hockey,
Hmm.
Nintendo Hockey. Would it have you switch the players during the game, or did you always play as one player?
So you could switch players. It wasn't super intuitive, but your player would kind of flash almost like they got the Mario star, like a kind of colorful rainbow, the one you're
Okay.
controlling.
Yeah.
In addition, no matter who you were controlling, you were also moving the goaltender. So you could either move the player in an advantageous way or protect
Yeah.
the goal with the goaltender, which was challenging to balance between.
Yeah.
The, you
Okay.
know, it's a Nintendo game. The AI system was not very robust, but
Hmm.
it wasn't bad, and I had fun.
Well, that's
I
good. It's
also,
surprising that that's the more fun one. But
yeah, it was impressive the amount of control I had. You could make up what kind of players were on your team. You could pick different computer components. You could determine the length of the matches, and you could even determine how fast the game was. So if you wanted to slow it down a little to make it easier, you could do that, or you could
Oh.
put it all the way to max. So
Huh.
I like the amount of options I had,
Yeah, that's
especially
actually
especially
surprising.
for a console that has two buttons and a
Yeah.
D-pad.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I forgot
How
about
about
that. It's been a while.
how about you? What'd you play?
I played. We'll start off with. It was just baseball, so it was for Game Boy.
Uh-huh.
So in the same vein as Nintendo Hockey, this was just baseball, Nintendo baseball maybe, but it was just baseball on Game Boy. So I'm gonna save my thumbs up for the end. I'll figure it out. But I had played a different baseball game on the Game Boy a lot when we were kids.
Bases Loaded. Great
Bases
game.
loaded. I think it was technically our dad's
Yes.
game,
Sure.
like, but I played it. Um, I would enjoy it. Like it was a game that I would play a lot. So I'm like, okay, I played Bases Loaded. That's not on here. Let's see how just Nintendo Baseball is. And when my conclusion is, and I was very glad for the rewind system, but I am convinced that hitting and scoring is based on an algorithm,
Hmm.
not actually doing the right button pushing. Because
Interesting.
there were like I would keep like because of the rewind system, like I'd keep doing a little bit of different things, and no matter what, like even if I were like if I knew okay, this is hitting the bat is hitting the ball at a different point on the bat, it still
Hmm.
would have it go in the same direction in the same distance. So it was
Oh, so it's either you missed or you got a hit, and it was predetermined
mhm.
what would where it would go.
A little, yeah, and maybe I needed to like play with the positioning a little bit differently. I still played with it, and it still gave me that weird, um, like algorithm me. It's always going this way, and it's like, oh, this just happens to be the player, and you just happen to be this combination. So we're just gonna give him a base run or a home run or whatever. So
Hmm.
yeah, that I don't know. That's I'm convinced of that now, but it may not be that. So, pitching was fun with it. Like when you pitch, that was different at times because you could do depending on what you're doing. And I just knew it intuitively from bases loaded. Like if you held the D-pad in a certain way and then release the pitch, it would you like do a certain pitch like a curveball or a fastball or something else depending on what you're pressing. So that at least was not too much of an algorithm, which was interesting. So
Hmm.
that's where I'm convinced hitting the ball is just like, all right, it's this turn to get a home run. It's this turn to get a base or something. So, eh. But pitching was fun. It took me a while to figure out catching the ball because intuitively I wanted to run in the direction that I think it was going, but really all the players were automatically going towards it, and it's just like when you actually saw it start to go towards a catch, you could like if you needed to, you could move a little bit more, or like the other main control was which base you were going to throw it to. All that to say though, those controls are not intuitive because I did make
Hmm.
mistakes at first because it was like, oh, if I press left, it's gonna go to the second base, and like no, it goes to the third base because that's you like I guess it's somewhat intuitive if you think of the actual diamond, but that kind of made me mad because I'm like, well, I'm facing this direction, and so the first base that it's gonna throw to will be the second base, but no, so that was a little
I had
disappointing
to
sometimes. Hmm?
I had to look up the controls to how to play hockey because there's no tutorial. You just got
Oh
to
yeah,
get
and
in
there's
there and
not for
figure it
this
out.
one either. Yeah,
Hmm.
and same for pitching. Like I said, it was intuitive because of bases loaded that I could hold down certain buttons and I'm like, I think this is going to be a fastball. I think this is going to be a curveball, and it would be. But like if you didn't play at all for something like that, you would just press, A and A, and then it would throw whatever pitch, and it's like that's you're gonna get hits off that a lot. So it's like you have to know. So that was definitely a you had to read the instruction booklet for, probably like the Nintendo Hockey, which those games would have had, but
Mhm.
the online console does not.
Yeah,
So
they need to digitize those books,
mhm.
even if just for museum historical value.
Oh yeah.
Um, it does remind me, the other baseball game we played a bunch as a kid, other than Bases Loaded, was Take Your Best Shot Baseball. Do you remember this?
A little
Uh,
bit.
it was
I think you
on
did
it
more.
was on our dad's work computer, and
Yeah.
it was like employees versus bosses, and cartoonishly violent. But the
Oh
catchers would just
yeah.
be your boss's head, so you'd hit the ball and it would land square in the middle of the face. It was very funny. It,
Yeah.
it was very entertaining back in the day.
Yeah, not too long at games or something, or like
No,
they wouldn't be ones that you play for a long time. But yeah,
I mean I
it's a
played Take
novelty.
Your Best Shot for a long time, but yes, they
Fair
were
enough.
they did run
Uh,
out pretty quick.
yeah.
So did you play anything else?
Oh, I did. Oh, I didn't give a thumb rating.
Oh yeah.
The baseball. I do want to give it one thumb up. Like
Mhm.
it's entertaining. It's something to pick up and play, and like if you don't keep rewinding and try to get the most perfect pitches and the most perfect bats, then it can go, and you could play a game in like 15 minutes or so. So it's not, yeah, it's fun enough. But I highly recommend looking up the controls. So that's why I would only give it one thumb. Yeah,
No
which
worries.
is too bad. And then the other game I played was for Sega Genesis. I think it was one of the original games for Sega Genesis. It's Altered Beast.
Oh, that's a classic one.
I remember playing a demo back in the day because they used, well, Toys R Us. We talked about Toys R Us before and the fun of getting video games there. I want to say that they had a demo of it at Toys R Us because I think Altered Beast was one of the games that would come with a version of the Genesis. Like you'd buy the console and it's like comes with Altered Beast and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So I remember playing demos of it, but like in the store, you maybe get like 3 minutes, and then some other kid wants to play, or our mom would go
Hmm.
like, "And time to move on."
Yep.
Um, so I remember having kind of fun as I would play it. So um, it's an interesting game. It's a very weirdly, or the graphics are very weird. Like
Hmm.
there's just really bizarre creatures. Like in today's rating system, it would be close to a mature rating, I think. Maybe not
Mm.
quite, but close. Like yeah, just some bizarre things. There was one boss that like threw heads at you, just like
Oh,
disembodied heads, and you like would blow them up, basically. Like it, or no, it wasn't. No, I think it was heads. There's another with eyeballs too, that threw eyeballs. It just was so weird. But it's supposed to be in like a from a classical era, I think.
like kind
Like
of Greek
maybe Greek.
mythology. Yeah.
It might be. I think so. Like I think there were some references to Greek mythology, but I mean, really bizarre ways that it referenced them. Um, it was fun. The controls were really weird and hard because the timing of how things would like hit the enemies wasn't quite right, and so it was really sometimes hard to land a punch when you needed to.
Hmm.
And then especially with the bosses, they they would throwing the eyeballs and other stuff, like it was so randomized, like sometimes there's just no way to avoid it, which really sucked. So that I think was just really poor way of actually having that go. Because usually you can see a pattern or there's some sense of like, oh, it's going to throw and land in this way. No, it was sometimes so randomized that like you could not get to whichever spot you needed to avoid attacks. So that was really disappointing and bad. Um, it's a side scroller. It it is fun in that way. Like you just progress, and then you get when you punch certain wolves, then you get power ups from them to keep altering your form. And so like in each level, there'd be like a final form that you could achieve, which was a beast, hence the altered beast.
Hmm.
But it was a different beast per level. So I, or what I ascertained, I played through 2 levels.
Hmm.
Um, but like I said, like the bosses just threw me off too much. Where I'm like, I don't want to keep going. The controls weren't great. So I would say no thumb up because of that.
Bummer.
It was too frustrating in controls. So, in I mean, there's a little bit of a nostalgia factor, but man, it did not live up to the nostalgia factor either because the controls were so bad. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, not the best
No.
crop of games, but that's okay. There are a lot of duds, unfortunately, in the
Yeah.
Nintendo Online Library, but there are more than a few treasures that
Oh
are
yeah.
worth your time. And let's talk about one of those now. At least I thought it was a treasure. Let's talk about
Spoiler
Earthbound. Uh,
already?
yeah, we
Yeah,
ready to move on?
Earthbound.
Okay,
Yeah. Oh
sweet.
yeah. I just find it funny that you're already saying it's a treasure and we haven't talked about it to give the rating, but we'll
And
see. I haven't given mine.
this
So
isn't quite like a famous RPG. It's more of a cult
no.
classic
Yeah.
JRPG, but it is held in high esteem by many, many people. I've
Hmm.
always heard it like this is one of the best games, at least one of the best RPGs of all time. And I hadn't played it back in the day, except for I was a big NES player in the original Smash Brothers.
Hmm.
So just describing it, it's a classic JRPG. It is you control Ness, who is kind of an everyday modern world set on Earth, kind of a fantasy country in Earth. And you're only about 12, 13 years old, but you are also destined to save the world from some evil force called Gigas. That is causing chaos, and you learn that in 10 years' time, this will destroy the world and leave it a wasteland. So, you learn about this from a time traveling housefly that
Yeah.
arrives on the back of a giant meteor that crash lands near his house, Ness's house, and you set off on your adventure to save the day by traveling from town to town and learning the song of each location so you can combine the songs to call forth the energy of the earth and magnify your power so you can save the day. And also, you have psychic powers
Yeah.
rather than magic. So, trusty fantasy magic has been replaced with modern psychic powers, I guess. And your weapons are like things like a baseball bat and a yo-yo. So it's a very silly setting and sense of humor in this game.
Hmm.
Um, what do you think of the presentation of this game, Chris?
It surprised me in some ways because oh, I have to say one thing real quick because when we
Uh-huh.
were saying we were playing Earthbound, in my head, so this was back in when we finished our last podcast, I thought we also had access to an Earthbound 64 because I'd always heard about it. It turns out it doesn't really exist. So we
Oh no!
we it's okay. We yeah, anyway, but presentation wise, back to that. It kind of surprised me because um it's a Super Nintendo game, older game, and we've been playing some that are okay in presentation or surprising in what they've done for their presentations. Like this was fairly robust in graphics, I think, for it. Like I think it rivaled our so far favorite for old Super Nintendo graphics, A Link to the Past. Um,
Really?
I thought so. Like I liked how it presented itself. Like it just people were fairly individualized enough. The scenery was kind of fun. I mean, there were some slightly basic things, but it's different from A Link to the Past. But I just appreciated its aesthetic, that it is a more cartoony JRPG. But I just realizing for the day that this is pretty good, I think.
So I have some potentially countering thoughts to that.
Oh,
But
okay.
first, I want to mention, so anyone who hasn't seen this game can visualize it. Imagine playing a RPG that is the Peanuts cartoon with Snoopy and friends. There was definite inspiration from Peanuts in the
I didn't think
character
about that, but
design
yeah,
and world design.
yeah,
Even so far as there's a man who gives you hints that you can pay him for hints to help you figure out what to do next, and he is sitting in a booth that looks a lot like a kind of ramshackled, put together booth like Lucy's psychic advice. I think is what she has there. 5 cents for advice.
psychiatry. Yeah,
Yes, psychiatry. That's it.
yeah.
Not psychic advice. I'm getting things mixed up already. Um, so one thing I found interesting is, this is not a fair comparison, but nonetheless I'm going to make it. Earthbound came out in 1994, and
Okay.
what I would describe as a much more visually impressive JRPG, Chrono Trigger, came out in 1995.
Yeah.
So yes, it did have an extra year, but uh, I don't think they reached as far on the visuals as they did on their storytelling and creativity
Hmm.
and sense of humor. Like that's where they spent their time, is creating this novelty rather than caring too much about wowing people with the latest and greatest in graphics.
Hmm.
Um, all that to say, I still liked it a lot. It's vibrant and fun, and
Hmm.
it suits the tone of the game a lot. And I think the music also does that with this kind of offbeat, funky vibes and sometimes eerie things that just
Yeah.
suited suited the environment and the storytelling that they were doing. What do you think about my counter that it is not visually impressive, but it's fine?
No, I do agree with you. I think I was just more impressed because I wasn't expecting a lot from it visually, and like jumping in, there was a lot, and that to me made it interesting because it had the potential, and maybe it was because we were coming off of playing Harvest Moon, which
Mm,
we were saying lacked a lot of things in distinctness, and they
right.
really didn't
Definitely
pay
lack
attention to the
clarity.
graphics. Yeah. So this had a lot more clarity, and especially for the amount of things that were going on at any given time in the game. um yeah, I think it was just the good shock of it, which made me think it was good. But I totally am with what you're saying. Of it's not the most impressive of Super Nintendo graphics that existed at all. So,
Mhm. What specifically did you think of the way combat was portrayed in Earthbound? Because it's very simplified. Like, walking around the
mhm,
world is still very visually interesting, but when you go into combat, your characters vanish. You're kind of like playing
mhm,
from their perspective, and your characters are just represented by text boxes where you can select their abilities. And then the enemy is right in front of you on screen, and they are visually interesting. Their sprite design
mhm.
and diverse and goofy, but it's also this very simplified thing. The magic effects, the psychic power effects are okay, and the attacks are often just a quick shake of the sprite. What do you think about the battle system, visually speaking?
It reminded me of Pokemon
Oh yeah, it
without
does.
having like, you don't see your own Pokemon kind of thing. Like, that's the way I would describe that system, because yeah, it just, you're right, like it did lack some things, and I wish it would have a little bit more, because sometimes it was maybe hard to tell exactly what was going on, or like which character you were hitting exactly at times. But it worked. But for sure, that probably shows the amount of attention that they put into the graphics, because it
Mhm.
was so simplified. Yeah.
I found it interesting because we're doing our Chrono Trigger series as well, so I just had that combat in my mind, and it's very dynamic with characters jumping around the field and having a special effect and a movement whenever they cast a spell or use an ability. And in this game, it takes a more narrative approach to combat. I found almost reminding me of like
Mm-hmm.
playing D&D, where there would be things like the spiteful crow dodges quickly, and the skate punk shreds fiercely, and the pogo punk charges forward. Like it's describing the action rather than showing it, which is nice from an imagination standpoint, as you can fill in the gaps in your own mind. But interesting that that's the direction they chose.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we
Yeah.
move on to gameplay? What do you think of
Sure.
that?
So I enjoyed it a lot. It did have its faults, um, but that was something else that surprised me. It was very, I shouldn't say very intuitive because, like I said, it does have its faults. There's some intuitive things, and so that makes it easy to jump in and move around. Like if it's like if um, RPGs, then you'll know how to function basically. One thing I will say that took me a few minutes to figure out is you had to directly face either objects or people to either like talk to a person or uh, get something from an object. And so
Hmm.
sometimes I think I could have gotten something or talked to someone, and I just thought like, oh, it's just an NPC that doesn't talk. Or that was happening to me at first, and it's like, oh no, I just wasn't directly facing them, or like they move slightly out of my character's view, and so he's talking to thin air, and it would point that out. It would just be like, hey, you're talking to thin air, kind of thing. It's like that that I wish had been a more traditional sort of thing, because I feel like other RPGs, as long as you're within the field of view of like
Hmm.
certain
A little
characters
more
or things, they're
forgiving.
like, you're fine. Yeah. So
Did you notice that you can use the L button as your interact button
no.
to automatically choose between investigating like a treasure chest or talking to somebody?
Oh no, I didn't know that. Okay.
I did see that early on, so that was helpful. Rather than if you press the A button, then it brings up your
Hmm.
your menu, and then you have to select talk to somebody, or you can select check it out, or you can
Yeah.
manage your equipment and inventory,
Yeah.
which was a strange choice, but it kind of worked. I,
Yeah.
I didn't find the L button to be as nice to press as the A button. I almost feel like those two should
Mm.
have been swapped,
Okay.
but it's fine. One thing I really liked in the gameplay field, going back to combat, is that there was an auto battle system that I think was
Yes.
is original to the SNES cartridge, not added later. I'm not certain on that, but that is just a great feature that a lot of modern remakes of old RPGs now have added back. Um,
Hmm.
but came prepackaged, I think, and just useful for getting through the everyday battles
Hmm.
that you don't need to think about or use any of your special abilities for. And then further quality of life that really impressed me is kind of like standard JRPGs where you walk into somebody and then the screen flashes and you go into battle, like Pokemon. This actually has, if you're over leveled or if you're strong enough, it'll just automatically make you win and you'll just get the experience and you won't have to go through the battle animation. So eventually, if you get strong enough, you could just walk around and collect experience by running into things, and it's really fast,
Huh.
which is just some very nice quality of life in this very strange game. Helped make leveling up a bit less grindy, which
Oh yeah.
was something like you had to do some leveling up to be able to face the challenges.
Hmm.
What do you think of the ATM system and your dad just giving you money whenever you call him?
I wasn't um surprise surprise for this podcast. I did not get too far, finish the game. So I didn't know that you could call again, but the ATM system I did access a couple times and was, yeah, that was interesting. I mean, I'm glad that there was money to begin with. Because that that helps a lot to even just progress in the game. But um, yeah, it's I don't know. I'm so used to picking up coins like whenever you were doing battles and stuff, and so sometimes I wish that I had picked up money from
Hmm.
people or a lot of it and did it that way, because then I could immediately go to a shop and not have to mess with stuff. But um it was a unique feature, and so I don't totally hate it. It just was different. So yeah.
I found it kind of novel and kind of helped me fit into the world a little bit better.
Hmm.
It still worked just like every other RPG. Your dad is issuing you money based on who you fought and how many battles you've been through. So it's the same as all other RPGs, but instead of it going into your inventory, it goes straight into your ATM, and you can call your dad and he will tell you these things, and that's how you save your game, is you use a phone to call your dad, which is just funny. And he always has some encouragement, like, oh, he's so proud that he raised such a good hero that's going around to save the world. All right, make sure to call your mom. Okay, bye. And that is also fun. You can call your mom, which the specific purpose of calling your mom in this game is to fend off a status condition called homesickness, which is just very cute. I like that. So if you get homesick, you just have to call your mom and you'll feel better. Um, I liked the ATM thing. It was also useful because if you died in Earthbound, you would, go back to the nearest inn
Hmm.
or hotel or something, and you'd lose half your money. So it was useful to keep most of your money in the ATM to protect it. Um, it, it was novel.
Hmm.
I don't make a lot of phone calls in video games, and this was one where I was making calls all the time.
Right.
You could even call to get a pizza delivered to you, and that's like a healing item. Or you could call your sister who worked at a delivery service, and that would be your inventory management. They would either pick up items from you or deliver items you'd stored with them. So they made robust use of the phone, and I imagine there would be more if I had played a bit further. People I could call. Speaking of inventory, how did you like the inventory system? Because that was pretty limiting.
Yeah, I felt that way too. Well, in the menu system, I still don't know if I like or dislike it. There was a lot to go through for the menus at times, but then also, yeah, just the inventory wasn't too unique of a system in some ways, but it wasn't. I wish it had been a little bit different, but I don't. Like story wise, I think it fit in some ways. Just like calling people and things like that, or is the part of that is very much the novelty of the setting and everything else. But I would say that for a lot of different things. I will say the one nice thing that they had built in, and I mean I guess we had this with Chrono Trigger in some ways too, but I know like with equipment and all, it would when you're buying equipment or anything else, like it was easy to tell if it was a better item
Hmm.
to use or not. That was actually nice. I talked to the one guy that told me all of that too, so
I
that
I
was nice.
think, as I remember having that conversation too. I think you actually talked to a dog in the first
Was
shop you
it the
come
dog?
into
I
it,
guess it was the
and
dog. Yeah,
he's like, "Hey, I'm a dog, but I have some advice for you."
yeah.
You just talk to it, and it's just this goofy sense of humor in the game where
Oh
some
yeah, for
dogs
stuff
have
like
things
that.
to tell you that are just helpful.
The amount of people that complained too that you would talk to was pretty funny. Also,
Mhm.
so
Um, I did find the inventory a little rough to manage because you could only hold 14 items, and each item took up its own slot. So it's not like you could have a stack of 5 potions or something, or 5
right, and it was all
sandwiches, which is
yeah,
the case.
like yeah, because I mean that's what it felt like. It was within the story. It's all the food and your equipment. Sorry
And
to
and the amount of story items it would give you, just random people handing out rulers and stones that carry the songs of the earth that I need
Mhm.
to collect over this game. But now that's an inventory slot used up because I need to keep my songs of the planet. around, I guess. I don't know. It was always hard to tell what was important to keep on hand, and it did like prevent you from discarding or dropping like important items. So you weren't. That could be one of your indication is, I don't think I need this. I'm going to try to drop it and see if it'll let me. Um, I did you make it to the second character? Because it takes quite a while for you to get any other additions to your party other than Ness. Did you make it to the Paula? I believe it is.
No, I got stuck at one point. That's actually not a complaint. It just like although like I did get stuck a little bit here and there with the game, like in some places be like, how do I move on? Um but
Mhm.
um yeah, the most I had was you kind of have a second player. I mean, towards the beginning of the game, so at least got a little bit of an understanding of what that would be like to have a second player
Mhm.
or a second character. But no, I myself did not make it to then, unfortunately.
It does help a little bit because each character has their own inventory of 14 items. So once you get the
Ah,
second one, it helps out a lot to be able to divvy up all those story items to different pockets. But yeah, that's kind of how that goes. And then one other thing I found novel is in RPGs, you're safe in town and then you run into tons of enemies out in the field.
hmm,
But in this particular game, enemies are everywhere.
yeah,
Something about the evil influence of Gigas is corrupting lots of different people and animals and turning them violent. So you'll be like walking through town, all of a sudden someone will come rushing up to you, and
yeah.
it's like you're being attacked by hippie, okay, and you're getting attacked by skate punk. Oh, all right, let's fight skate punk. And I thought that was a nice way to mix things up and provide a little more variety of things to do in town.
Well, again, and maybe we want to jump into the story a little bit. Like it
Yeah.
fit with the story because, like you're saying, they actually said, from the get go, like, hey, the whole world is being corrupted, so be aware. Like
Mm.
animals aren't friendly. And I remember in Onett Town, I think is the first
Uh-huh.
town. Like there are a couple people that mention that, like, oh, we notice the animals are attacking everyone now, or it's just some things like that. So um, I kind of like that they were like mixing that up because it had to do with the story. Yeah.
That was nice. Um, I want to revisit the time traveling housefly from the very beginning of the game, and its unfortunate end, to further indicate what kind of humor this game goes into.
Yeah.
So the time traveling housefly shows up, starts telling you that you're the chosen one, gonna save the world. Here's how you do it. Okay, let's head back in. And you go into somebody's house and you start talking to them a little bit, and all of a sudden, the mother of some of the neighbor kids comes over, is like, oh look, a bug, and smacks it, and kills the time traveling housefly shortly after you meet it, leading to a very long death scene where the fly
Yes.
narrates the situation that Ness faces ahead while slowly and comically passing away. Oh, I see the light. Oh, but one more thing I need to tell you. Oh, it's getting faint. It's getting tired. I'm so tired. Oh, but I need to give you this item. And it's just
Yeah.
goofy and funny, and I really enjoyed it.
Me too. Yeah.
Other examples of strange elements of the story is that at some point you will get a magic eraser and you can use it to remove a giant statue of a pencil in front of you, which is okay. And other times, much later in the game, I started flying across the world map in a UFO. I couldn't tell you why I was doing this, but it happened, and it was charming in its goofy sense, and I really enjoyed
Yeah.
that aspect of it. Did you enjoy the story that you encountered?
I did. Yeah. And again, that was kind of surprising too, because I think I expected a lot more of a traditional RPG, and I guess in some ways it was. It's like the you're the chosen one, save the world, but I think just having that quirky humor mixed into all of it made it so delightful and so entertaining to keep going through with it. Yeah.
I very much enjoyed how concise the storytelling was. I have been playing, lots of modern games, and they are behemoths of long-winded stories. I just finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and that's hundreds of hours, and so much of that is just listening to people talk. And I love those stories,
Hmm.
and also it's really refreshing to have somebody like tell me the purpose of this game in 3 sentences, and then I'm back to playing.
Yeah.
And that is nice thing, kind of a lost art in older
Yes.
games to be able to communicate what is going on efficiently. And part of me wonders if it was just because there was such limited memory storage on the old cartridges that they just couldn't
Mm.
afford to use it um,
Yeah.
for anything other than a couple sentences. Um, or maybe it wasn't that bad. I'm not sure, but that was enjoyable. Shall we go into final thoughts and ratings for Earthbound?
Sure.
Would you like me to go first, or shall you?
I think I could give my final thoughts
Sure,
first.
go for
They're
it.
foreign. I am giving this two thumbs up
Hmm.
myself. It was so like delightfully fun. As much as I got stuck in it a couple times, it's a game that I kept looking forward to playing because it
Hmm.
just was so interesting to me. The story was uh, interesting, for lack of a better term. I can't think of a word that I'm trying to find, but it was very, very interesting. And like we keep saying, the humor was just so much fun. But I think that the system worked as much as it had a little bit of flaws. It wasn't that hard to overcome the flaws, and so having something like that, it makes it an easy game to play. But I mean, it's something that I'm like, oh, I could see why this has become such a cult classic. It's a classic to me.
Hmm. I also agree that once I played this game, it was so clear why people loved it and have
Hmm.
been talking about it since it came out in, I think it was at 94, 94 or
Hmm.
95. Um, the sense of humor is goofy. It might not land with you, but I think it I think it has surprisingly broad appeal.
Yeah.
I think most people that play this game would have a good time even today, and I think that kind of makes it novel in the sense that there aren't really games like this. There are a handful that still exist and still come out, but it's a very rare type of adventure to go on, and
Hmm.
so I'm definitely also giving it two thumbs up. I think it lived up to the hype quite well.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like I know the answer to this, but our next rating scale is this worth playing for anyone with the online pass? Did it age well, and is it still fun? And I would firmly say yes.
Oh, I would too. It is. I think it's a must if you have the online console. Well, I
Mhm.
guess yeah. If you have the even the lowest pass, so you could play it. I would say yeah. This is a must.
Mm. And then I did not grow up playing this game. I knew of it, but
Hmm.
never played it more than a minute. And did you ever play it back in the day?
No, it was something that I was aware of. It was again to reference Nintendo Power. It was very much prominent in there, but I never touched it. Yeah.
So so we decided last time or time before that we would give it a half point for nostalgia factor if neither of us actually knew if it brought back fond memories of when you played it and lives up to those memories. Which does deny it the 6 out of 6. It
Hmm.
gives it a 5.5 out of 6. But I think I
That's pretty good.
strongly
Yeah.
suspect this has nostalgia factor
Hmm.
potential for anyone that's played it before. So kind of an honorary 6 out of 6 for Earthbound, even if 5.5 is what's going to go down in the books.
You could round up
Yeah, yeah,
5.5. Yeah.
exactly. So that does it for Earthbound. Definitely check it out. It is very fun. And next time we're going to be talking about the Pokemon trading card game for, I believe it's the
Hmm.
Game Boy Color, but it is also available at any of the
Oh,
Nintendo
yeah.
Switch Online plans. Um, we all will, as always, have a Chrono Trigger recap pod coming up soon, and then the Pokemon trading card game after that.
Hmm.
Uh, Please send us questions at twobrothersplayagame@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter and YouTube at Two Brothers PAG. You can check out Chris doing some live streams on YouTube probably every other week or so.
Yeah,
And
something.
please review us on iTunes. That would be a huge help. It doesn't cost you anything other than a couple minutes of time and would be a huge uh, help to us getting the podcast out to more people. Chris, I just have one final question for you. Using your
Hmm.
psychic abilities, what three words am I thinking about right now?
Mountains are nice.
This is life.